Hey aficionados, Winston Goodfellow here. And this is really quite special today because we're at ground zero of an event called Cars and Coffee. Those of us that are true aficionados knows of Cars and Coffee because cars of all type come to get together to share the camaraderie, the total passion of the car. And at ground zero, this is where the event actually started. We're in Irvine, California. Do I call this the old Ford Center?
It still is the Ford Design Center.
Okay, Ford Design Center. So who am I talking to here? This is John Clinard, and here we are with Freeman Thomas. These are the actual fathers of Cars and Coffee. So if you wanted to know where it came from, here are your men. So gentlemen, now this is worldwide. John, you remember a few years ago, I had an email from a guy in Tehran, Iran. Hey, can we use Cars and Coffee? And he wanted to turn it into something else. And it's just like, yes. Yeah. So how exactly did this worldwide phenomenon come about?
Well, in fact, you mentioned this is a Ford Design Center. Freeman was the head of this design center at that time. And we went to an event called, Crystal Cove, Newport Beach. Beautiful shopping center on the Pacific shore. And over time, it was so popular it outgrew the space. The landlord said, I'm going to give you guys 2 weeks. You'll have to go somewhere else. Freeman and I were there. We thought, we got room. Let's just invite them over here. Let's give it a try. Well, the trial lasted 412 consecutive Saturdays, actually. But in fact, the way the name came about is, Crystal Cove. Freeman was brainstorming. Crystal Cove, CC.
Like a typical creative.
Coffee. That was it.
Yeah.
So Freeman originated the name, and in fact, had the initial idea, let's go here and do it. And being car enthusiasts and knowing that we sorely missed the Crystal Cove event, we brought it here, and here we are still going.
And so if I can just interject, when John says car enthusiasts, that's really downplaying it. Okay, these guys, this is their business, but it's just like these guys are car geeks emeritus, realistically.
Yeah.
And so, Freeman, what do you have to say?
Well, no, what I have to say is that, so John is like a kindred soul, to me, and kind of a co-conspirator. And I look at myself as kind of a popcorn machine of ideas, and John is an executor, and he's someone that can really make something happen. And I think between the two of us, collaborating and talking, and where the idea comes from is a collaboration, but it needs structure. It needs to have the right idea of how to do it. And so the first week, I remember us putting flyers on the cars, 2 weeks before, and then the week before out at Crystal Cove. And we thought, nobody's going to come out here. And all of a sudden, they all came. And then, of course, the forum started. It doesn't have the ocean. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have all of that, and so, but it did have the cars, and it did have the people, and we had the parking lot. And I still remember there was a advertising tagline at Ford at that time called "Bold Moves," and so we had an internal meeting at Ford with. We had someone that was managing the building. It was myself in the studio, and then John with PR and all of that and events. And we were all sitting upstairs, and we said, well, these people are all going to come here. Should we ask Ford for permission? And then John goes, bold moves, let's just do it.
So you want to know how things happen behind closed doors? So there you go.
Yeah, but I think, though, that without John and his wife and the team of volunteers and our brainstorming of how to curate, because it is a curated event, we kept always having to kind of retrim it and crop it, because all of a sudden it started getting too many of one type of car or too much. We wanted to have a real diverse.
How did you do that? How did you trim and curate?
It was difficult. We came to the point where we had to exclude four-door cars, for example, just to be selective. So we're getting a lot of, I'll call them ordinary BMWs and Mercedes and stuff. Yeah. Very nice cars, but not. Our motto was cars you won't see the other 6 days of the week. And that's what drove it. You had to have something different. And Freeman, through his contacts in the industry, being one of the stellar designers in the world, he knows everybody. And he was calling us people saying, hey, bring your concept car, bring your one-off, whatever. And they did. So that momentum was carried just through word of mouth, where everybody wanted to bring something special. So that continues to today.
What was the first day?
The first day?
Yeah. What was the first? When was the first one?
Keep talking, I'll look it up.
Because you said 412 in a row. Okay.
Yeah,
What was so we're at ground zero? What was day zero?
We have to look it up. I think 2008.
Yeah. 2006. Let's see.
2006. Okay.
Okay, we ran from October 21st, 2006 to December 20th, 2014. It was 410 consecutive Saturdays. And finally, it was overrun, and we had to close.
And I'll tell you something about John is that during those Saturdays, I would try to get up earlier, but he was already here. He already had everything set up with his wife, So it was futile to try to beat John,
Well, the best part about this is when you were talking about him being the organizer. So when we walk in, there's all this signage, public parking over here, cars over here, Lincoln's Lattes, right here's the sign. And so what I loved was, here, you guys talk for a minute. And then John, boom, he immediately looks up on his phone, and within like 20 seconds, it's done. Talk about the organizer.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that was really the key is that Ford was neutral in this. This was about everybody else and all the brands and celebrating the enthusiasm that we love about cars, and kicking tires and all of that. And so, and one of the things that we did do is put on featured marques, and so featured marques also helped bring certain audiences and crowds here. And then during certain Saturdays, we would pre-plan, let's say that the rows, just like they are today, French cars, English cars, Japanese, things like that, American cars. And, and that helped a lot too. Or brands, we had, if we knew that it was the Porsche Lit Meet weekend, we would have all the Porsches, and we make sure that everybody felt great here.
Well, you guys did a great job.
You make the point that we did not ask Ford for permission. However, when the people in Michigan saw what was happening, they fully endorsed it. In
yes.
fact,
I'm rolling him under the bus right now.
The thump you heard, that was John under the bus.
One of the things one of the early concerns was people driving rather exuberantly.
I remember that. Yes.
So we decided we need to have police presence.
Yes.
Ford Motor Company spent a considerable amount of money hiring Irvine police to be here every Saturday.
Yeah. And it was John really that was he was going to the city, going to the police department, looking at the rules, because this isn't really, it was a gathering, which is different than an event.
Yes, interesting. Yeah.
We did not have to fill out an event form, get an event permit, none of that. The city worked with us. Yeah, it's just a spontaneous gathering, which is what it is. And we just had a police presence to be sure everybody was safe and
But it was just like today, it's like a time machine, because, you see a lot of familiar faces. People came from all over the world. They would bring their camera crews. And we tried as much as we could to keep the social media down, because we didn't want this thing. It was big enough.
Yeah, you didn't want it to become overrun.
And we didn't want just a parking lot filled with cars. We wanted an experience.
So for this event, I guess, why and how did you choose the cars? Because you went how long without one?
Well, September 2019 was the last one we did, which was a one time, just as today is a one-time event. And we went to people, including Freeman, to the leaders in the community, saying, you pick 20 cars of your marque, you pick 20 of yours.
Car clubs, leaders.
So we let them pick the cars. I did not pick the cars. They fed me the information, and I sent out the invitation via email and got responses. We had 288 RSVPs to today, and probably more than 200 cars are here despite the weather.
It's been fantastic. So when you guys are wandering around, did anything catch your eye?
A lot of stuff caught my eye. I mean, I'm just like, I go to the BMW row, and this is early BMW 2002 with that is kind of a hot rodded with a injected motor. It's almost celery green with ivory nose on it. That was one. And of course the Porsche row, there's the slate gray 67 911S. It's just like the one. The 928, that's on the first row, on and on and on.
So, Freeman, give me a real quick snapshot on your career, because you spent time at Porsche. Did you do anything at BMW?
Nothing at BMW. I was never a BMW. So I spent from about 1983 through 1990 at Porsche at Weissach, and then worked on lots of great programs like 959, a program called 965, which later became the 993. That was in the 80s. It was years before the 993. And then went to Audi with Jay Mays. So
that's how you did the jump. Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
and so then Jay and I did the Concept 1 New Beetle concept together, Audi TT, lots of other projects, and then I went to Daimler Chrysler and became the head of all vehicle architecture, advanced architecture, and advanced design. And so then we did a slew of vehicles, including the Chrysler 300.
Yes.
And then that went into the production studio, but did all the architecture on it. You know, from the Hemi motor with all the Mercedes suspension and building up the blocks so that, and even the theme of the car, you know, on the front, and looking at kind of Steve McQueen, Thomas Crown affair.
Yeah. Good car geek stuff there.
But
Steve
it goes,
McQueen,
but it
Crown.
goes on, you know.
Yes.
And then I rejoined Jay at. He was running Global Ford Design and PAG, and so that's how I got here. And also John and I have known each other for a lot of years.
And then you've been I necessarily can't call you a company man, though. That's really what you are.
I've been known as the village idiot, actually. But no, I've been with Ford since 1972. And
Holy Toledo.
over the years, every job I pursued was an enthusiast job. I didn't want to just be a drone in the beehive. And I turned down a lot of opportunities. I don't regret it all. I've been doing things. I had spent 7 years with special vehicle operations, wrote the strategy paper for us to get into Formula One, did the Mustang SVO, things of that sort. So things that are fun to do, I figured that's a better time. I'll work a long time and have fun rather than a short time and not have fun.
And then if memory serves me correctly, you were involved. Now we're going to go real geeky. Was the GN34? Am I remembering the name right?
Yep.
Ford almost went mid-engine in the mid to late 80s, but then the Explorer took the cash, if I'm
Yes,
remembering
exactly.
correctly.
And then John also created the bridge to Shelby, getting it back
That's
to
right.
Ford.
Yes. There's a lot to thank this man for. So,
Yeah.
this man.
No,
But especially this man.
So,
we're just
continue.
having fun. We're having
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
You know?
So you got a couple more minutes, guys?
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a couple cars? Because I was thinking, Freeman, what are you doing now? Because you're doing some real interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So shall we take a look at the Manx?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me grab my coffee here. So, a couple years ago, my friend Phil Seraphim and I did the acquisition of Myers Manx directly from Bruce Myers.
And so for those that don't know what Myers Manx is, what's our Cliff Notes version?
Well, so Myers Manx is the pop culture icon from the 1960s, created the first, fiberglass dune buggy, got everywhere, all over the world. What we're looking at right here is in 1967, 1968, that Steve McQueen created a movie called Thomas Crown Affair.
Yes.
And this
I
is
remember.
the original Myers Manx used in that movie.
Oh, that's
It's
outstanding.
101. It's priceless.
So the badging here, Confer, what's that mean?
Okay,
It's-
so Confer, the con was from Steve Condos, Pete Condos, I'm sorry. And Steve McQueen had a relationship with Pete Condos in the Valley, and he had a company called Confer, and I don't remember what the fur was, but together they took an original Myers Manx and they modified it and built this car there.
And so you guys are now doing a new Myers Manx, correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little.
All right, so we're doing not only a new Myers Manx, but we're creating a time machine back to the 60s so that you can build the original Myers Manx on the original Volkswagen Pan, and we're remanufacturing all the parts and pieces to do that. So with original Volkswagen Power or whatever you want to put in it, we're doing that. The modern Manx is basically, it looks similar, but it's so much resolved and refined, and it's all electric. And so, especially at the back, when you look at the back, which doesn't have the engine sticking out, it's all designed. It's on an all aluminum monocoque tub. It's got IRS suspension, electric steering. It weighs only about 1,600 pounds.
Wow, yeah.
And that's with an aluminum monocoque. And so It's going to have a range of about targeting about 140, 150 miles for the lower powered version. And then that's a 20 kilowatt, and the 40 kilowatt, we're targeting 300 miles of range. And it's, believe it or not, the 20 kilowatt electric motor and battery pack weigh less than the original Volkswagen engine and gearbox.
When are you anticipating this, should I say, going on sale?
It's already on our website. You can put a deposit down. We showed it last year for the first time in August in Monterey, and then in July we did a private reveal in Malibu. But from that point on, you can start putting deposits down, and we're going to be in beta production later this year. We already have our prototypes running, and so the beta, we're going to build 50 cars for hand-picked customers. They're all applying to be a beta customer by giving us stories and why. We're not just giving them to people that just because they are.
Yes, you know? Yeah. So you're almost being like Casserole with the dual gear, where everybody was hand selected, not just any rich guy could come in and write the check.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then we'll go into full production at some point in 2024.
Awesome. You and I were talking about the Commendatore earlier.
Yes.
Give me your take on this car, because I was blessed to spend a good part of a day with this thing. I was on photo duty, and so I never opened it up, but what I really noticed on this, here we are with a one-off. So this for me is maybe the 1990s coolest car. Done by a guy named Eberhard Schultz, if I'm pronouncing everything correctly, who had a career. He started with AMG, then was at Porsche. No, it was Porsche, then AMG, and then he went with B&B, and then started his own company called Isdera, of which this was towards the end of his reign there. And this was when the top speed wars were going on. And it's an extraordinary piece. And so you as a designer, when you're looking at this, what do you see? What's tickling your fancy?
So we're fortunate to have this part of our collection under Philip Seraphim, and it's one of one. And what I see, and knowing the history of Eberhard Schultz, everything that he developed, he's an ex-Porsche engineer, and everything he did was serious. It's not about the styling, but it was about the function. And so aerodynamically, this car has an extremely low drag coefficient. I don't know exactly what the drag coefficient is, but it will achieve speeds of about 230 miles an hour plus. It's incredibly stable. It's well handling. It's well mannered. According to Philip Seraphim, it drives so easy.
Yes, I can attest to that.
Yeah, and the visibility in the car is excellent. So versus a car that's being styled versus engineered. This is engineered, and it's engineered all the way through, from the chassis, the suspension, to the drivetrain. It has a V12 AMG spec Mercedes motor in it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because when you have something like this, and we're talking about the engineering, you just get in it and you feel that it's right. I mean, even at slow speeds, I could feel how it was right. Where, boom, your hand hits right on the shift.
Yeah.
The steering wheel's right here where it should be. Pedal box is a little tight for me, but took the shoes off, I was fine.
Yeah.
So, and what I loved was how effective the periscope roof was.
Yes.
You know, take that, Lamborghini. So going kind of geeky with a periscope roof Countach.
So I think everything in the car is about great ergonomics, great. I mean, as dynamic and I would say it's probably one of the most extreme supercars ever created.
Agreed.
But it's all functional, you know, and that's the difference. And that's the difference between the way an engineer, and Eberhard Schultz worked as a design engineer. He worked in the design studio at Porsche. So I worked with people that worked with Eberhard Schultz, and like Richard Zoderberg, people like that, and they had just nothing but accolades to talk about his aesthetic ability and his engineering ability, and have those two talents together is rare.
Very rare. And then what's interesting, because we were talking earlier about the car, and you were talking about the difference between almost like you're saying, styling versus engineering, and how the real engineers understand how important the engine is to the overall car.
Yes. So, you know, somebody like Eberhard Schultz, he decided not to create his own motor. And that's very smart. It's almost like Porsche in the beginning. deciding on their very first 356s to basically take a modified Volkswagen engine and then evolve it from that. Don't put your money into the motor, put your money and your funding into the overall concept of the car. So this engine already exists, you know, and it's a fabulous engine. Today, companies like Pagani uses it.
So it's a big Mercedes V12, naturally aspirated, no turbos, and smooth as friggin' silk.
Yeah, and it's manual box, analog all through and through, but really designed to use every day.
It's, yes.
And that's what a supercar really should be.
John, what's, you know, what are you seeing here as we're looking down our
I want to take the two cars down and tell you a story.
Let's go. So we just did our little wander, and so we're by a Ford GT here with Cars and Coffee with the founders, Lincolns and Lattes, excuse me, gentlemen. John, who's one of the founders of Cars and Coffee / Lincolns and Lattes with Freeman. There was something about this particular Ford GT that struck your fancy. What's our story?
A man who needs no introduction, the late Dan Gurney, one of the great racing drivers of the world, and a Californian, in fact. He won Le Mans in 1967 with A.J. Floyd, as everyone knows. His wife, Abby, who is here today, gave him this Ford GT as a surprise birthday present.
Nice.
In fact, it was done at a restaurant in Newport Beach, and I drove the car up with a big red bow on the roof to surprise him. But I want to show you a feature that's unique to this car.
Oh, I see it already, yes.
Yep. The Gurney bubble. On the GT40 that Dan raced at Le Mans, so tall they had to put a bubble in the roof to clear his helmet to give him room in the car. So this is the only one that has this bubble, which was done for Dan Gurney. It was, the car was built, we sent it post-production to the Saline facility, they put the bubble on it, and we delivered it to Dan. So this is a very unique car. And I think the license plate, as I recall, yes, it says Le Mans 67 on the license plate.
Outstanding. I was wondering if it might say Prez 64, because you remember when they had the mock campaign to elect Dan Gurney for president in 1964?
Right,
Yes.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And a black plate too. Yeah.
So the Dan Gurney family has 4 cars here today. This GT, the third generation GT, this Cobra is an exact replica of a car that Dan raced at Sebring in the 60s, and then one of his Eagle Indy cars. Beautiful Eagle car, one of the most iconic designs ever in a Formula car. So the Gurney family continues the tradition, full speed.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, the time today has been fantastic, and for enthusiasts everywhere in the world, thank you so much for what you created, because it's just taken the passion. Literally, I mean, the passion was already there worldwide, but it's just everyone now does Cars and Coffee. It gives enthusiasts a place to come, like you guys are saying, on the Saturdays. And what's so remarkable about this is the way you guys did it. We wanted it to be the cars that you couldn't see the other 6 days of the week, and what better place to do that in Southern California. Right. So gentlemen, thank you so much. And aficionados, thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you on the road.